Have you ever looked at a massive business empire and just wondered, how does that even work? How can one single company control so many different businesses? Well, today, we're giving you the keys to the kingdom. This is the official blueprint for setting up a holding company, and we're going to walk through it step by step. Let's get into it.
So here's our game plan for today. We'll start with the blueprint, what a holding company actually is. Then we'll dive into the 3 huge steps to get one up and running, and finally, we'll talk about crossing that finish line. Simple as that.
All right, let's start with the blueprint itself. Before you even think about building, you have to understand the materials you're working with. So what exactly is a holding company? And maybe, just maybe, the more important question is, what is it not?
Okay, now this is probably the most important distinction we're going to make today. A holding company, its job is simply to hold things. It owns assets, it owns shares in other companies. That's it. It doesn't actually run the day-to-day operations. That job belongs to a totally separate entity, a management company. They're the ones doing the active managing, the strategic planning, all the decision-making. So the key takeaway here is simple. One company owns, another company operates. You've got to keep them separate.
And here it is. The whole journey laid out in 5 core milestones. You can think of this as your master plan. We're going to start with getting a name and the right approvals, all the way to grabbing those final licenses that make you official. Let's see how it all kicks off.
All right, let's get our hands dirty with the first actionable step, the name and the approvals. This is all about laying that solid foundation, getting all your ducks in a row before you start building.
And right out of the gate, there's one rule you absolutely cannot break. Your first big decision is the name. And whatever you choose, it has to include the word holding. Seriously, this isn't a suggestion, it's a requirement. It tells everyone exactly what your company is all about from the second they see the name.
So, once you've got your name and the Ministry of Commerce and Industry says, yep, that works, you've got to reserve it, and that'll cost you 1,000 Qatari riyals. This basically puts a lock on the name so no one else can snatch it while you're getting all your other paperwork sorted.
But listen, you can't just sit on that name forever. Once you pay that fee, the clock starts ticking. You've got it reserved for 6 months. Now, you can renew it once for another 6 months, but that's it. So there's a real sense of urgency to keep the process moving forward.
Now here's a really important checkpoint. If any of the companies you're planning to bring into your new holding company are in these specific sectors, we're talking education, industry, transportation, anything connected to Qatar Energy, well, you have to hit the brakes. You've got to get special approval for these activities before you can even think about registering. It's a mandatory pit stop.
Okay, so you've got your name, you've got your approvals. Now we move on to step 2, registration and capital. This is the moment where your idea stops being just a plan on paper and becomes a real, legal, and, well, a very well-funded company.
And this is where the real paperwork begins. You're going to submit your formal request to the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. Once they approve it, you get 2 incredibly important documents. First, the Articles of Association. Think of this as your company's constitution. And second, the Commercial Registration, or CR, which is basically its official birth certificate.
And now for the number that makes everyone sit up and pay attention. The minimum capital you need to even start a holding company. Are you ready for this? It's 10 million Qatari riyals. Yeah, this just goes to show you this isn't some small-time operation. This is a serious financial commitment from day one.
And just to be crystal clear, that 10 million isn't just a number you write down on a form. Nope, that entire amount has to be sitting in a bank account, a new one opened just for the holding company. The government is going to want to see proof of that deposit before you can move a single step further. So the company is real, the money is in the bank. Now for the really exciting part, unifying your businesses. This is where you actually build that corporate family and bring all your separate companies under one big roof.
So how do you actually do that, legally speaking? Well, it's pretty interesting. It's done as a formal sale. You'll actually prepare selling contracts to transfer 100% of the ownership of your current companies to the new holding company. So the holding company becomes the new and only parent.
But here is the absolute genius of it all, and this quote really nails it. The original owners, you're not actually selling out and walking away. By selling your companies to the new holding company, you become the partners, the shareholders in that holding company. So you're basically trading direct ownership of a few smaller businesses for a piece of one much larger unified enterprise. You're still in control, just from a higher level.
We are in the home stretch now. You've navigated all the big legal and financial stuff. Now we're at the finish line.
let's talk about the last few certificates you need to get and what this is all going to cost you in the end.
Okay, next is a practical thing, the Civil Defense Certificate for your office. But, and this is a big but, there's a handy exception. If your office space is under 250 square meters, you don't need one. That's a great little detail that could save you a whole step in the process.
And here we are, the last two pieces of the puzzle. You'll get them both from the Ministry's single window portal, which makes things a lot easier. You need the trade license, that's what gives you the legal permission to actually operate, and the computer card, which is essential for hiring people. Once you have these two in your hand, congratulations, you are officially open for business.
So, after hearing about all these steps, the capital, the approvals, you're probably thinking this must take months, right? Well, get this. The entire process, from start to finish, can potentially be done in about 1 week. 1 week. That is incredibly fast for putting together something this complex.
Of course, there's always a little fine print, right? That 1 week timeline is the absolute best case scenario. It totally depends on getting all those other approvals quickly and making sure all the partners are available to sign things when they need to. And as for the administrative costs, putting that huge 10 million capital aside, you should plan to spend somewhere between 7,000 and 10,000 Qatari riyals. And there you have it, from the first idea of a name to that final trade license. We've covered the legal definitions, the massive capital requirement, how the ownership actually gets transferred. The entire blueprint is now laid out right in front of you. So really, there's only one question left. What will you build?